Once, when I was in middle school, I thought I had signed my academic death sentence because my buddy El Huevo swore to me that he had the leaked exam and that if I studied it, I would pass without a problem. So feeling confident, I didn't open a single note. But when the day of the exam came, I saw the questions and started sweating like a pig in a sauna because nothing matched. So I begged the teacher to help me and he said, "Let the devil help you, dumb kid." And in the end, my friend Huevos told me, "Dude, you won't believe it, but that exam was from 3 years ago." And I was like, no! That day I discovered the true meaning of academic betrayal.
Time to study!
Once my physics teacher, Mr. Neutrino, failed me because, according to him, I didn't know how to add, but I swore my calculator was possessed. So I begged him to check my test and he told me,
"If you spot a mistake, I'll let you pass."
So I went to my buddy, who always got straight A's, we checked everything, and my test was deader than Michael Jackson. But I came up with the great idea of changing my buddy's name on the test and putting mine instead. So I went back all confident, smiling like Einstein, and Professor Neutrino sees me super happy, and without another word, he says to me,
"Congratulations, Einstein."
And I got happy until he gave me the paper and I saw that it was a beautiful giant zero. Once, when I was in middle school, the strictest teacher expelled my friend Jorgito from school for slamming the door in his face. Because I was going to art class, but the teacher wasn't showing up and there were only 10 minutes left before class ended. So we started playing, pushing the door so no one could get in. So then, at that moment, Chuchito comes out and we yelled at Jorgito, "Push! Push! Don't let him in!" And Jorgito, with all his strength, was pushing like he was defending the gates of heaven. But then we see that Jorgito was losing and a face appears from outside the door. And it was the teacher, with crooked glasses, looking like an angry bull. But Jorgito kept pushing with all his strength. And we shouted, "Abort mission! Abort mission!" And Jorgito looks up and when he saw the teacher's face, he even fainted. Once, when I was in high school, we did a project to make super sports cars out of cardboard, but when we finished, we put them in the backyard. But my friend, whom we called El Macaco, saw it as an opportunity to make homemade tamarind in the projects without having to go to the bathroom. So one day when we went to get the cars to present them, we got to the backyard and we sniffed, sniff, sniff. And it smelled worse than my nephew's room in Bapeni. But then we saw that Macaco had come out of there with his pants down and I was like, "Holy Mary, what is he doing?" And in the end, we realized the huge mess he had made. One time, when I was 5 years old and in kindergarten, I decided to taste the classroom glue because I thought it tasted like vanilla. And without anyone seeing me, I gave it a lick, then another, and then another. And it seemed like a heavenly treat to me, until the teacher caught me and yelled at me.
"Kid, stop eating the glue already!"
But it was already too late. I felt like little chef from Ratatouille was cooking for me. And I said, She took me to the bathroom to clean me up, lecturing me about not eating glue. I didn't care, and once back in the classroom, I continued my culinary experiment. One time I got a 1.3 on a test because I didn't understand a thing in class. But so I wouldn't look dumb, I nodded my head as if I were the smartest one. And the teacher was explaining and I was there, confidently nodding my head up and down, even pretending to take notes. But when the day of the exam came, I got a glorious 1.3 and the teacher looked at me and said,
"What's up, Manuel? You were like a lizard in class, nodding and even taking notes. What happened to you?"
And with my dignity on the floor, I just told him, "Prof, I was just drawing little figures, I didn't understand a thing." Subscribe if you're breathing right now. Once when I was a teenager and went to high school, they called me Nescafe because I was made entirely of pimples. And before I turned 15, I had a face as smooth as a baby's bottom. But after a while, I started getting not just pimples, but erupting volcanoes on my face because my whole family has oily skin, and that makes me break out more easily there. One day at school, where we often gave each other nicknames, I was just joking around with friends. They called me Nescafe, but I didn't understand why, and I thought it was because Nescafe was good in the morning, but that wasn't the reason. But the good thing is that I won't shrivel up like a raisin so quickly.
Wpóż the toxic L and beat up so rude is nie
One time, I almost blinded my friend Panzas because I brought a green laser to school that I had bought at the fair. So I said to Panzas, "Look dude, this laser is really powerful." And he says, "How much will you give me if you point it at my eye?" And I said, "What's up with this dude?" And I told him, "Panzas, if you want money, just ask for it." And he told me no, because he didn't beg for money. Then he said, "If you give me $100, I'll let you shoot it at my eye." Well, I was just a kid, so I said okay, but Panzas wore glasses. So the beam was stronger and I pointed it at him. But in the end, later on, he told me he saw a black spot in the center of his eye for more than a week. One time, my dad embarrassed me at school when I was 7 years old because my mom had gone on a trip. So my dad had to take care of me, but from the very first day, which was Monday, he messed up and sent me to school as best he could because he took me without my Tarzan underwear, with a super exotic hairstyle, pants that weren't even part of the uniform, and my shirt on backwards. So, at one point, just as classes were about to start, the teacher saw me and said to me,
"Your dad took you to school, right?"
And I said, "Yes, how did you know?" And in the end, they sent a note to my parents that said, "Parents, this is a school, not a circus. Please send the child properly dressed." And when my mom got back from her trip, she told my dad he was silly. One time my mom burned my arm and I got a water blister from the burn. Because we were at my brother Moharin's Christmas play, and when it was ending, we went up on stage to look for him. But back then my mom weighed about 150 kilos, so I reached out my arm to grab Moharin and hug him, and my mom did the same. But on the stage there were lights that were really hot because of the electricity. So my mom, without meaning to, put all her weight on my arm, pressing it against that damn spotlight. And I start to tell her, but with the noise, she couldn't even hear me, and I tried to move her, but I couldn't until I had to pinch her so she'd realize. Once when I was in elementary school, my notebooks were full of the parakeet stamp, and my mom would scold me because I was always talking with my buddies Panzas and Kalaka during class, and the teacher was always,
Be quiet, you little devils.
But since we wouldn't be quiet, Panzas, Kalaka and I would get the parakeet stamp, and they said that if we collected 53 of those stamps, we'd be suspended for 3 days. But the good thing is I only got up to 52 stamps, but there was one time they gave me 58 stamps and I got suspended for 3 days. And my mom made me sell bread outside our house, because if I wasn't going to study, she was going to make me work, but the good thing is I earned 1,000 pesos.
A cambiar, todos vamos a...
Once, when I was a teenager, I was a fan of Justino Rivera to the point that I thought I was him in real life and I'd go up to girls and try to win them over. So cringe! Until one day, a girl said something so crazy to me that I didn't even want to be Justino Rivera anymore. One day, I edited a photo of myself with Justin Bieber, uploaded it to Facebook, and captioned it, "Here with my clone." But when I got to school, a girl who was also a fan came up to me and said,
I've already seen your edited photo.
and I told her, "Oh girl, you're just jealous." And then she says to me,
Well, number one, she's not your clone because you're poor. And number two, you're uglier than homemade sin.
and at that moment I said, damn, she humiliated me.
I'm who's the toxic L and beat up so rude it's near.
Once in elementary school, my class and I almost found the ultimate hack to never do homework again. That is until we were betrayed, because one day the teacher said,
Guys, write down the homework.
and nobody took out their notebook because we agreed to play dumb. The plan was simple. If nobody wrote it down, nobody had heard it. But then the worst happened. The next day, the teacher asked,
Who did their homework?
and the whole classroom went completely silent. It was so quiet, it was scary. Even the crickets stopped chirping. But then my buddy El Kalaka stepped up and said, "What homework, teacher? You didn't assign anything." And just when we thought we had already won, the annoying know-it-all of the class stood up, walked to the desk, turned in her homework and an apple, and because of that traitor, in the end we got 4 times as much homework. Once at school, there was a really chill teacher, the kind everyone likes and who always says, "It's all good, kid." But every time someone talked about politics, the guy would change completely and start talking like a demonic judge. Objection, irrelevant. And he'd point with a ruler, like he was in a courtroom. But the worst part happened one day when a new classmate laughed at his favorite political party. And man, he shouldn't have done that. The teacher looked at him like he was going to fail him, and my brave friend stood up for him. But the teacher next door pulled him aside aside and said,
Leave him, that's just how he is.
Since then, whenever someone pretends to be a political scientist, we all say, be quiet, they'll give us 10 assignments because of you. One time I was really pissed off, talking trash about a teacher who always gave us ridiculous homework. So I recorded a really long audio message in the school group saying, that guy doesn't teach, he gives psychological punishment, among other little insults. Right when I wasn't going to say it, I hit send, and I felt like my soul left my body. When I saw the name of the group, which was Tutoring with Teacher Carlitos, and the teacher was the group admin, honestly, I was paralyzed and frozen. I tried to delete the message, but WhatsApp said, ha, how funny. It wouldn't let me delete it, and 5 minutes later he replied, interesting analysis. See you tomorrow in class. The next day, I went to class expecting a lecture, but he just laughed and said, today there's double homework. Since that day, my voice messages go through triple spiritual verification.
I was paralyzed, really scared, and I couldn't move.
Once when I was in middle school, my buddy Tripas whispered to me, do you want to see something really insane? And like an idiot, I said yes. But the guy pulls out a little bag with something black in it and whispers to me, it's a human finger. So I turned paler than a loaf of oxo bread, started breaking out in a cold sweat and said, Tripas, where did you get that? Then the sicko throws it into my hand and I screamed so loud that I knocked over the bench, my friend Roberta's pencil case, and almost the teacher. And in the end, it was just a rotten banana. Since that day, whenever Tripas says, look at this, I run. One time when we were in middle school, the principal announced over the loudspeaker, students, today we will be checking backpacks. And immediately chaos broke out. Because my buddy, Sardina, had his collection of bootleg toys, Panza had 4 sandwiches wrapped in foil, and my brother Moharin had a giant tamarind that looked like a bomb. But when the prefect came into the classroom, we all started hiding things like we were professional criminals. So I stuffed all my trash into Triboline's backpack. Then, when they opened it, a smell like something dead came out, mixed with fruitsy, and the prefect said, who put an animal in here? Since that day, they called Triboline the walking zoo. One time when I was in high school, they sent me to the principal's office for the most criminal laugh of my life because we were cheating with totally straight faces. And my buddy Lucho sent me a forbidden meme, the kind that's not suitable for class time. But as soon as I saw it, I covered my mouth, my eyes teared up, and a weird little noise came out of me, kind of like a flat tire. So the teacher looked straight at me and said,
Let's see, Manuel, share the joke.
So I, all red, said, no teacher, it's not funny, but Lucho whispers to me, breathe man. And then I burst out in a monumental laugh that echoed in the classroom, and the teacher just said the principal's office. Once my math teacher basically gave me a free grade because I was dumb and had failed his class since I hadn't studied. So the teacher gives me the exam and my final grade and tells me that I failed. So I begged him and said, no teacher, give me a chance. And he told me that if I checked the exam and found a mistake where he had graded me wrong, he would pass me then. So I ran, went to look for the brainiac of the class, and kind of checked it, and sure enough, my exam was a disaster. So I grabbed the correction fluid, and an answer that I had wrong, I erased it and marked it as correct. But the teacher obviously noticed, and that was it. He stared at me and said, oh Manuel, well, you can go home. And in the end, as a thank you, I gave him a watch worth $3,500 and he said, thank you Manuel, but study dummy. Even miracles have their limits.
I have no choice.
Once, when we were in middle school, my buddy Skinny yelled, they're going to kidnap us, run, because he saw a black van parked outside. But in half a second, the classroom turned into an action movie. The teacher was yelling, El Calaca hid in the trash can, and I ran with my sandwich under my arm. Then, a man gets out of the van wearing dark glasses and everyone starts yelling, it's the mafia! But in the end, it turned out that the man was the new PE teacher and the van was an Uber. Since that day, we call him the fitness hitman.
I'm scared.
Once when I was 11 years old, I made my whole school believe that I had a real pepper spray. Because my cousin Sardina had given me a fake one that they sold at a joke shop. But it was identical to the real one. It had a cap, a button, and even the sound, but actually it was just air. So everyone saw me as the dangerous one in the classroom, but one day I was just messing around like a fool. I pressed the button in front of the principal and the sound was so loud that they activated the emergency protocol and wrote me up. One time I failed at school and my parents punished me as if I had set the classroom on fire. All because, according to the teacher, I didn't send the homework to her email, but honestly, I did send it. It's just that instead of putting at gmail.com, I put at gmail.com. So the email went to Narnia, and I ended up grounded for a month, not even allowed to go to the convenience store. And even though I showed them the date, the file, and even cried in front of witnesses, they told me, next time, check before you send it, dummy. And that's how I learned. But because of the trauma, now I even check if I breathed right.
I don't think this guy is very smart.
Once I didn't want to go to school on the first day because I was so scared, a fear that made me sweat to my core. So, my brilliant plan to avoid going was I'm going to pee on my uniform. But the worst part is that my uniform was brand new and shiny, it even smelled amazing. But then my mom started sniffing. Sniff, sniff, and the crazy woman said to me,
Oh look, you're already doing great for your afternoon swimming lessons.
and even so, she put me in the car and took me to school, and I arrived smelling like a skunk, and I learned that you don't mess with my mom.
What? Are you challenging me?
Once I felt like the smartest man in the world for finishing my math exam. I finished in 10 minutes because it was Monday at 8 in the morning and the exam lasted about 2 hours. But I had answered it in just 10 minutes and as far as I was concerned, I had done everything right. But then 2 days later when they hand out the results, the teacher says, I'm going to give the results in roster order. And since I was always the first one, he goes and says, Manuel Aguilar, you got a 1.8 and I just made this face. One time, teacher Carmelita caught me cheating on a test when I was in middle school, and then she told my parents because I have mush for brains. And since I hadn't studied, I started writing all the answers on my arms, and that's the worst way to cheat. I put on a sweater to cover myself, but halfway through the test, the teacher noticed me acting suspicious and said to me,
Manuelito, isn't it kinda hot in here? Take off that sweater.
and I was like, no ma'am, it's really cold. Then she looks at me closely and says,
Take it off!
and that's when I knew everything was going to go wrong because she looks at my arms and just stares.
I knew it!
And I tell her, they're tattoos, ma'am. But in the end, since the teacher didn't have a car, I took her home in my parents' truck. And she says in front of them,
Manuel.
Did you have a cheat sheet?
and I was screwed when I got home.
People only learn through beatings.
Once when I was in kindergarten, the teacher put me against the wall because I talked too much. And to punish me, she made me stand in the corner of the classroom facing the wall. But the teacher didn't count on something. That I talked non-stop and I made up imaginary friends so I could keep talking and the teacher would tell me.
Who are you talking to, child? There's no one near you anymore.
And I would say, with Miguelito, can't you see him? He's right there. He told me he's going to visit you at night. And the teacher sent me back to my seat because she got scared. And the next day she told me, because of you, I didn't sleep all night, kid.
Mama, I'm a